Bruchem Aboim B'Shem Irgen Shiratar. We'd like to be big Shekayach to everyone for coming today. And today's share is from Rabbi Yakov at Smith Shlita, Hafrashas Challah questions and answers. We would like to have the great sister sponsoring a share called Irgen Shiratar 718-851-8651.
Recently we had some interesting common Challah questions. Someone was making a small amount of Challah for Shabbos. What is the minimum amount that requires Hafrashas Challah? Someone was making oatmeal cookies, a combination of oat and flour. Is there a חיוב Challah? Someone had a suffix if they took off Challah. I guess they might forgot. They don't remember they took off Challah from 5 pounds of dough. Is there a חיוב to take off? And then someone, they just got married and they encountered the first time they had the shayla. What do you do with the piece of hafrasha after you have it? Do you have to burn it? It's very challenging to burn it. There's a lot of smoke in the house and there's no fire in the house. So it seems to be a variety of questions, but as we always say, we have a reicha Torah, foichva, the koilaba. If we look in the pasuk, the psukim that describe the mitzvah of Challah, I think we'll get enough information for all of these shaylas plus. In Parsha Shlach, the Torah HaKadosh says, "B'vayachem el ha'aretz asher ani mevi eschem shama." When you come into Eretz Yisrael, that I brought you there. It seemed to be a double lashon. V'hoya b'cholchem milechem ha'aretz. When you eat from the lechem, tarimu truma l'Hashem. Take off truma. Of course, Challah is a form of truma. Then again, reish zarisei seichem Challah tarimu truma. Ketrumas goyre and kain tarimu v'isai. And then again, reish zarisei seichem titnu l'Hashem truma l'doyrei seichem. So here we see obviously a lot of information. First of all, the fact that the Torah HaKadosh refers to Challah, the hafrasha piece, as truma, because really it is a form of truma. It's an hafrasha, and it has a deraisa חיוב to it. So it's not a chiddush that it's called truma. Also, more importantly, where is this חיוב? The Torah clearly says, "B'vayachem el ha'aretz," and that's why it's clear that the חיוב, the raisa of Challah, is in Eretz Yisrael. And this is not a chiddush, because Trumas and Maisris, which is also Tluyis Ba'aretz, is only in Eretz Yisrael. But it seems to be even more than regular Trumas and Maisris, because here the Torah HaKadosh stresses B'vayachem. Zok the Gemara in Ksubas Daf Chafei, it's not just being in Eretz Yisrael, but it's Bias Kulchem. It has to be what we call in Gemara term, Roiv Yoishveh Ha'aleh. It's not enough just you're in Eretz Yisrael, but it has to be the Roiv of the Yishuv is in Eretz Yisrael. That's why it's pashut that today in Eretz Yisrael, even in Eretz Yisrael, there's no חיוב deraisa to take off Challah. Because today, Laida, it's not Roiv Yoishveh Ha'aleh. And that's why the Yeredeya Shin Chav Beis Siv Beis, the Mechaber says you're not chayiv in Challah even in Eretz Yisrael midaraisa because it's not roiv yoishveh aleh. So today Challah even in Eretz Yisrael is only midarabanan. The obvious question is, and what about chutz la'aretz? Now, if you think about it objectively, there's no reason to take off Challah in chutz la'aretz. We don't take off trumas and maises in chutz la'aretz, and since the Torah says Oretz, it's a mitzvah tluya ba'aretz. Why should I think there's the חיוב Challah b'chlal and chutz la'aretz? But Tosfos in Kedusha Lamed Vav Beis makes an interesting observation. Really, when the tfuah grows, there's no חיוב Challah. In fact, there's no חיוב Challah even on flour. When does the חיוב Challah begin? Arisei seichem, when you make a dough. So who creates the חיוב of Challah? The Yid when he makes the dough. So it says Tosfos, Challah, unlike Trumas and Maisris, is more of a chayvas haguf. You created the חיוב when you mix the flour and water. Therefore, Chazal felt it appropriate to say Challah, you should take off even a chutz la'aretz, even though essentially it's a tluya ba'aretz. But since you create the חיוב by making the dough, there's a חיוב even in chutz la'aretz. But there's even a more powerful reason to take off Challah and chutz la'aretz. Imagine someone has his favorite flour that he likes in America, and he's going to Eretz Yisrael. So he can't be without his flour. He packs up a 5-pound bag of flour. He goes to Eretz Yisrael and takes out his American flour and makes 5 pounds of dough. So there's no doubt about it that challah is chayiv and challah. It could be even the rice if it's Rabbi Shvel. The challah grew in America, but the chiyuv challah does not depend where it grows. It depends where you make the dough. Trumas and mais is not like that. If you have Israeli grown tomatoes, you have problems with trumas and mais, even in America. If you have American that you bring to Eretz Yisrael, doesn't make a difference. It's where it grows. Says the Yereim in the end of Siman Kuf Mem Ches, that's why challah is really not so much a chayvas ha'aretz. It depends where you make the dough. But be that as it may, there's no doubt about it that challah in Eretz Yisrael, be'ikra is the araisa, today is the rabbanon, but challah in chutz la'aretz is also a chiyuv. But the Shulchan Aruch in Siv Gimel words it differently than in challah Eretz Yisrael. Zog the Mechaba, after he says challah in Eretz Yisrael is the rabbanon, but we take off challah in chutz la'aretz, Kadesh le'tishtakach Torah's challah mi Yisrael. And as the Mefarshim explain, is not really the same chiyuv like in Eretz Yisrael. It's only to connect us with the mitzvah. But both are mechuyev midrabanan, but there's no doubt about it, challah in Eretz Yisrael has more of a chiyuv. Now we come to another question. How much flour, how much dough is required to take off challah? So this is also, as we'll see, hafoich ba de koil, it's a pasuk in the Torah. The Mishnah in Challah Perek Beis, Mishnah Vav, says on Chameshes Revoyim Kemach Chayovim B'Challah, which we'll soon see the Shulchan Aruch says is 43 1/5 of Bayim. The amount of 43 1/5 Bayim is Chayiv and Challah. Why? Says the Gemara in Erev in the end of Pei Gimel Amud Aleph, because the Torah says Arisei Seichem, your dough. What's my dough? What does it mean, my dough? The dough, the amount that they used in the midbar, how much the mon was. And the mon was an oima, which happened to be 43 1/5 bayim. So therefore, says the Mechaba in Shin Chav Dalid, Yardei, Shin Chav Dalid Aleph, you're chayiv to take off challah when you have a minimum of 43 1/5 bayim. Now, obviously, less than that amount, there's no chiyav challah. I be machmir if you have 20 bayim. The answer is, why be machmir? There's no such mitzvah. You know, someone said he wants to take of challah even on a small amount because chatzi shir. That makes no sense. Imagine someone has 3 kanfais to his beged, he's putting on tzitzis because chatzi shir. There's not the tzuras mitzvah. Less than 43 1/5 bayim, there's no chiyav challah. Now the question is, okay, fine. Why taka do we call that piece that we take off, we call it challah? You know, we call something truma, lashon of Torah. We call something meiser because it's 1/10, eser. Why do we call the piece that we take off, why do we call it challah? So this is very unusual, but the Shach in Shin Chav Daled, Sif Cotton Bays, says that we call it challah because challah is the gematria 43. Because it's 43 bayim in the chiyuv. It's 43 1/5. Zok Teshach, the hay of challah corresponds to the 1/5. So in the word challah, we have the full shear, 43 1/5. Now this sounds all good, but l'chayre it's not fair. If you count 43, then obviously you're counting the hay. How could you reuse the same hay? So it seems the Shach has that question, and the Shach says that Lamaisa, the hay is also there. Which, hard to understand, what does that mean? So the Aruch HaShulchan in the end of Sibei says that what the Shach means, you count the hay twice, but that's not a teretz. How could you count the same hay twice? So the most positive pshat would be, hay b'miluyai is spelled hay, hay. So maybe that's where you have 2 hays. Challah is 43, then the hay b'miluyai, you have 1 more hay, that's 1/5. And I saw the Medrash Rabbi Yudches in Bamid Yudches Chaf Aleph, like the Shach says, the Remez Challah is minyan Mem Gimel, and the Matnas Kahuna explains because Challah Gematria Mem Gimel and Hey B'Miluyai is 2 hays. So I think we could even add more than that, because the fact is that some people spell hey b'miluye hey aleph, not hey hey. So how do you get the 1/5? So it could be, and that's what the Eitz Yosef says on the Medrash, hey miluye is hey aleph. Now what does he mean to say? I'll tell you. Hey aleph is 5 and 1. If you reverse it, it's 1/5. So you have Challah, 43, and then you have the hey aleph is 1/5. So you have already 3 pshatim in why the word Challah is used. But we haven't seen anything yet. Listen to this. The Shvus Yakov in the Tshuva Chela Gimel Siman Tzadik Aleph, he quotes the Shach. He says it doesn't make sense. How do you use the same hey twice? So he quotes both the Ber Hetiv, the Balaturim al Torah, and the Shach al Torah, that they have the same remez, and they say that hey has a tag on it. As we know, that a hey has one line going up in the Sefer Torah. So I think what it means to say is, if you look at the hey, it's a hey, 5, and the tag is like a 1. So you have 1/5. Says the Shvus Yaakov, that's what the Shach in Yeridea means to say. He says, Challah is 43. The question is you can't count the same hey twice. Must be that we'll use the tag to make it 43 and 1/5. Now, you're probably wondering, why don't I point out that this is a Shach l'shitasei? The Shach in Yeridea says a Chiddush, and the Pshat we found in the Shach al Torah. The answer is very simple. The Shach al Torah is a different mechaber than the Shach in Yeridea. So it's not l'shitasei. So I saw the Shvus Yaakov says that even though it's a different mechaber, but laham milsa bar mazlei. So the Shach al Torah and the Shach in Yeridea are 2 people, but they happen to have the same way of looking at things. But we haven't seen anything yet. Listen to this. The Pesachei Tshuva on our Shulchan Aruch, on our Shach, he sends us to a Yaris Dvash. I looked it up, Taka. It's in Drush Dalit. It's in the old prints. It's page Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis. And the Yaris Dvash in the Drushes wonders, why do you use the word Challah? Challah is supposed to be the hafrasha. And he proves from a Radak that the word luz is a better word for the piece of challah you take off, because luz means nivdal. You take off a piece and the rest is kosher. And luz, believe it or not, is also 43. So why do you use challah, which is not so perfect as the word luz? So he said the teretz is because luz doesn't have an hay in it, and challah does. So the fact that we use the word challah, not luz, gives us the right to darshan the hay, and therefore it's 43 and 1/5. But there's even more than this. The Ginzei Yosef in Siman Kuf Tes, one of the Tshuva Svarim, he says that really, I think what it means to say is that the ikka of the word challah is chal. The kedusha is chal on that piece, and the rest you're allowed to eat. So it's like chal, 38, and hay is 43. But since the ikka is word chal, we could look at the hay and say hay by itself. So it's 43 and 1/5. So it's amazing how Mamash hafoich about the koilaba, how Torah has so much oimik to it. The word challah has 5 different remazim, but at the end of the day we call it challah because it has the remez of 43 and 1/5. Now I should mention that what's really interesting is we call the Shabbos bread challah. That's really not true. Really, the hafrasha is called challah. So probably Yidden look at the Shabbos challah and they see the mitzvah of challah. Why do people make challah on Shabbos? Easy to buy. You want to make an hafrasha. So we look at bread, we look at gashmis, and we see ruchnias. It reminds me that the brisker Rav, as you know, he was very, very edel, and when he saw the sight of blood, he would faint. But yet by a bris, he would stand there and watch the bris milah. So they asked him, how come he doesn't faint when he watches the bris milah? So he said, das is nicht blut, das is dam milah. It's a different metzias. He was so tired that he didn't see blood. That's dam milah. So anyhow, we see challah and we see the mitzvah of challah. Now, the question is, how much is 43 and 1/5 bayim? So this is a part of the big sugya of the shiurim. But to make a long story short, the miniga oilam is to say 5 pounds of flour is enough to be chayiv challah. It's 43 and 1/5 bayim. But 2.5 pounds is already a suffix, take off without making a bracha. Now, this is very hard to understand. Why are the two shiurim? There's no confusion. We learned that the Chiyuv Challah is 43 and 1/5 bayim. Why the two shiurim? So it's noteworthy that the whole sugya of shiurim, how much matzah, how much mora, how much does you have to bench and bread to wash, is really rooted in our Hilchos Challah. Narei Zepela. Tonight, Yehuda in a Sefer Tzlach and Pesachim Kuf Zayin writes that it was before Pesach, and you have to get ready to eat the matzah l'halacha, and you have to know how much matzah you have to eat. So he said, I looked up in the Shulchan Aruch, got to learn Hilchos Challah, and we see how much is a shear. We find two ways of calculating the shiurim. Either using the agoidim, the thumbs, which is one measurement, or use bayim. And if you look in our sugya Hilchos Challah, the Mechaber makes the cheshbon how to figure out how much is a shear. Zog T'nei B'Yehuda, I sat down and I made the calculations. And the shiurim of a goydlim of thumbs and is double the shiurim of bayim. That doesn't make sense. It's supposed to end up to the same mem, gimel, and 1/5 bayim, but it comes out as double the shear. How could that be? One shear is double? The goydlim is much bigger than the shear of bayim. So either we have to say that today's thumbs are bigger than the olden days thumbs, that's why it came out bigger, or we're going to have to say niskatnu abayim, eggs got smaller. So he writes there, he says, Lamaisa, we see that the Metzias is the doyer is holchem umismaitim, people getting smaller, and I would add, we could say niskatnu hadoyris. So it doesn't make sense, people's thumbs got bigger. Must be that the eggs got smaller. Things are getting smaller. You go into the bakery, the cheese Danish is half the size that it used to be. Everything's getting smaller. So therefore he says, that's why when it comes to a mitzvah deraisa, you could see a beya and it's only half what it used to be. And that's the famous chiddush of the Noid de Yehuda, that you have to have double the shear kazesim of matzah and all other mitzvahs, because niskatnu habeyim. But then he adds what's negeya to us. That's why, regarding challah, I have an uncertainty. Because if you go with one shear, it's half the amount of the other shear. So therefore he says, when he writes this, a fint, which is not a funt or a pint, but it's a fint, a certain type of measurement in his times, 1 fint kemach, take off challah without a bracha, 2 fint, take off with a bracha. So the question of how much to take off challah, either 2.5 pounds or 5 pounds, is really rooted in the Noid Yehuda's major concern about the shiurim. So what's interesting is, if you were to ask me, if you have a suffix what to do, 2.5 or 5, we could say, Sveika d'Rabbanan l'kula. And 2.5 is enough. So the answer probably is that really many poskim don't hold the Noid Yehuda's chiddush. And nothing changed. So really 2.5 is chayiv miyikadadin. Narvas, you have a suffix, Noid Yehuda's Noid Yehuda. So 2.5 we take off without a bracha, and 5 pounds we take off with a bracha. Now, Lamaisa, we'll soon see another pshat in Sveika d'Rabbanan, but it seems that this is why the Welt has this minig, a 5 pound bag of challah, a flour we take off with a bracha, and rather it's a Torah-friendly world that we live in. Standard bags of flour, b'derech klal, are 5 pounds. The bash machine, which is very easy to make challah with, holds 5 pounds of flour. So basically 5 pounds you make a bracha on, and 2.5 pounds already, a person makes half a bag, you take off without a bracha. Now, people ask, do we, or why don't we, I should say, why don't we take off challah when you make cake? Women take off challah when they make challah, why not when you're making cake? So almost according to all poskim, even a blila raka, which is a cake, a batter, is chayiv and challah. So the answer is very simple, afoich ba dekoila, but it's a pasuk in the Torah. And that is the word arisei seichem. Since the chiyuv challah is minimum, the 43 and 1/5 bayim, and we gave that share of 5 pounds of flour, so when you make 5 pounds of flour into challah, you have to take off challah. Now, I'm not a baker, but I inquired, how much flour do you use in a typical cake that you make? So I was told either 1 cup or 2 cups of flour. Now, how many cups of flour are there in 5 pounds of flour? Between 18 and 19 cups. So when you make a cake, even if you're generous, you use 2 cups of flour, it's way below the minimum share. So that's why when you make cake, typically there's no chiyuv challah. It's pashut less than the share. There's no din of chatzi share. If someone's making on Purim for a simcha, or in a camp, or in a yeshiva, or a big volume, and they're using 5 pounds of flour, avadi, you take off challah with the bracha. But typically, the homes, we do not take off challah because it's less than the share. Now, someone was making 5 pounds of flour, and they mixed it, I think they're making cookies, flour and oats. So that says beferish that the 5 minei dagan are mitzdarif, if you make it together. In fact, the Baal HaTurim has that remez, the word challah, the hay, stands for 5 minim. Now, if someone makes 5 pounds of bread, some of it is oat and some of it is wheat, and they don't want to mix it, then you don't combine it because that's your makbid on the combination. But if you make it into one, of course both flours are mitzdarif. And this leads us to the next question. What do you do if you have a suffix challah? I'll tell you, someone asked me the shayla, his wife definitely made 5 pounds of flour, and Pashat, the woman forgot if she took off challah. I says, how was that shaykh? I mean, it's a pretty big, what you do with it? So he told me, he said, she's an over 50 moment. You get over 50, Pashat, you can't remember. There's a cheskes chiyuv and a suffix if the mitzvah was done. Sometimes you buy an item and it's questionable if you took off challah. What do you do in a suffix situation? And also, is there any difference if the suffix in Eretz Yisrael or Chutz La'aretz? So what comes to mind is the old klal, sveika deraisa l'chumra, suffix d'rabbanan l'hakol. So if that would be true, we could come out with the following conclusion. Today, in Chutz La'aretz, and even Eretz Yisrael, suffix l'kula. And l'chayr, this is mefurish in Shulchan Aruch. The Gemara in Pesachim, Daf Mem Chesem at Beis, has discusses when you make cake, l'mashu, in different doughs. But you put it into one sal, into one basket, and together there's 5 pounds, so the sal is mitzdarif. Why? Because now it's in one keli. The Gemara has a shayla. Let's say you put the same 5 pounds of cake, not into a basket, you put it onto a tray or onto a table that has no walls to it. You just put it down onto one surface. Do we say, since it's on one table, it's mitzdarif, or no, you need a basket, and here there's no walls to the table or the tray? So the Gemara comes out with the psak teiku. Boy layifshita. The Shulchan Aruch and Shin Chafei Aleph has this shayla and says if you put 5 pounds of cake onto a tray or table, you're potter. Why potter? The Gemara says teiku. Zok the shach and the goyin sveika the rabbanon lekula. So we're very comfortable to say the Gemara is assuming sveika suffix challah is mutter. However, there's a different mechaba, which is actually a beferish Mishnah. The Allah, someone asked me, he lives out of town, but he buys frozen dough made by a non-Jewish company. He has a good hechsha, but he buys, let's say, 2 bags of 3 pounds each, and he bakes challah. So he's really using 6 pounds of dough, which is chayv challah, made by a guy, and it has a good hechsha, but doesn't say anything about the hafrashas challah. So I told him there's no chiyuv challah. It's a pasuk in the Torah. I re-say seichem, the Gemara Shulchan Aruch, the Gemara Darshans, Shulchan Aruch Shin Lamed Sif Aleph, v'la isas akum. If a guy made dough, there's no chiyuv challah. Now, so the Mishnah in Challah, Peri Gimel, Mishnah Vav, has the following shayla. Someone was undergoing gerus, and he made the dough before he was megayer, no chiyuv. He made it after he's megayer, is a chiyuv. Let's say he doesn't know when he made it. Now this is strange. He doesn't know when he made it. And it could be it's an over 50 moment. Maybe someone made it for him with his dough. But he has a suffix when the dough was made. The Giyusa, he's pata. As a Yid, he's chayiv. So the Mishnah says he's chayiv. And that's in Shulchan Aruch Shilamet Sif Aleph. So now we have 2 questions. First of all, I thought Sveika D'Rabbanan L'Kula. And how do you understand Shin Chafei and Shin Lamed? So you could say that, which is a doichik of course, but Shin Chafei that says Yipat is talking in Chutz La'aretz. And Shin Lamed is talking in Eretz Yisrael, and that seems to be the pshat of the Shach, Sivkot and Ches, but he says it's Sarachian. No one says that. Could be the chiluk is if a regular suffix, you have to be machmer. We'll soon see why. Because challah b'yisoy, let's not forget, the Mishnah challah, aleph, Mishnah Tes, says a person that eats the hafrasha is chayiv misvidei shamayim. Challah has a very big chayma to it. It's a potential misvidei shamayim. So maybe every suffix challah you have to be machmer, because potentially it's misvidei shamayim. But when the Gemara has a suffix, and the Gemara stamps it, takeaway, so that's innocent until proven guilty. So there's no chiyuv. Maybe the word is when there's a boy leifsta, that's why it's mutter. Maybe that's the pshat. Or maybe the chiluk is where the suffix happens. If the suffix is in Eretz Yisrael that ikra is the raisa, then you have to be machmir. That's what Shin Lamed is talking about. But if the suffix is in Chutz La'aretz that never was the raisa, sveika lahakol. And that seems to be the pshat in the Taz, and Sifkot and Gimel. Safik Eretz Yisrael lahachmir, Safik Chutz La'aretz lahakol. But as I told you, there is what's very logical to say that stam chala misafik is awesome. It's a safik misudei shamayim. Shin chaf hey, we'll have to say that's a safik that the Gemara does not even resolve. And indeed, this is the Radvaz. On the Rambam in Hilchos Bikurim, Perik Ches Halacha Tes, where the Rambam quotes this halacha of a Safik Ger, Freg the Radvaz, that's on the page in the Rambam, I Sveika D'Rabbanan L'Kula, why is the Rambam Machmeh Misafik? Nira L'Taretz, L'Fishu Avain Misa, Stam Safik Chala is Mochama, period. The Yad Avram on the page in Yeridei also says this chat, and that's why Stam, Safik, Chala, we have to be Machmir. I saw some of the Achrayim say, actually the Gdulei HaKodesh, on the Buchach's, the Sefer on Hilchos Chala, he says another Chiddush. And he says, Stam, Safik, Chala, take off Chala. It's a Davar Sheyesh Le'Matirim. No big deal. Not like a Safik if the behemoth is kosher or treif, you have to throw it out. Take off a little Chala, what's the big deal? Just like if you have a Beis Chanel to be Yomtiv is Muktzah, if it's a suffix, what does Chazal tell us? Wait till after Yomtiv and eat it beheta. Here too, don't eat it b'suffix Yisam. Take off a little piece, and then eat Gesundheit. So he calls a suffix Chala Davar Sheyesh Le'Matirim. And that's a very big Chiddush. And that'll be the Achrayim after him asked this, what do you mean? Davar Sheyesh Le'Matirim means, don't do anything, just wait, and you can eat it beheta. Safik Muktzah, wait till after Yomtiv. Here, what are you telling me to do? Take off Chala. So I'm not relying on a heta. I'm taking off Chala. But what I think the pshat could be, came to my mind right away with this suffix, the famous Lashon HaGemara in Avodah Zarah Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. Gemara's talking about a suffix if it's Tamei B'Shus Harab, if you have to go to mikvah or not. So Gemara says, what's the problem? Hamaya B'Shikasa D'Benhara. There's plenty of water out there. Zilu Tfula, go Toivel. Don't make a big deal of a suffix. Just Toivel and stop worrying. What does that mean? So obviously, the Gemara is telling us, when you have a suffix and you could resolve it easily, then resolve it. Don't take a chance. Take a sveika mutta. But if you could take care of it before you know it, it's over. So take care of it. Now, where do we see this in halacha? So this is a chiddush. The Mechaber in Archaim Kuf Samach Yud Aleph has a shaila, you wash until it's yadayim. A suffix if the mayim was kosher, so up to Mechaber, wash over. Now, why wash over? The Tilas Yadayim is a sveika d'Rabbanan. So Mr. Brewer says that it's easy to wash over, big deal, take some water, revi is all you need. And the Sharatzian says, look at the Goyin. The Goyin says the Pshat. The Goyin sends us to the Gemara of Avodah Zarah Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. What does he mean? Well, what are you agonizing it? Wash? No, just take some water, wash over. You need a revius, 3 ounces of water. Come on, just do it. So, it's not that it's a Davar Sheyesh Le'Matirim per se, but it's easy to resolve. Now, it comes to Challah, it's even easier. When you don't need a kazayas, take off a kol shoe, and that's it. And when you take off a kol shoe, you don't have to burn it till holidays. So take a little piece, you have a suffix, and throw it away respectfully, and that's the end of it. So Rabbi say, we have actually 4 reasons that a suffix Chala you have to be machmir. First of all, ikra deraisa in Eretz Yisrael. The fact that it's misa b'dei shamayim b'yisoid. Some say davar sheyesh le'matirim, and we said it's easy to do. And that's probably why we can understand that Safik Challah L'chumra. The only question is why, in the case of Shin Chafei of the tray, why is the Shulchan Aruch Mekel? That will say a Boy Le'ivshita is different. It's almost like it's certified, not a Chiyuv. Now you'll appreciate a few words of the Shibali Alek at the end of Siman Reish Yud Beis. He quotes the Go'ainim, Chuvas Go'ainim. If you have a suffix, if you took off Challah or Chiyuv Challah, Mafrisha Oisa B'loi Bracha. Just take it without a bracha. What does he mean? I think it means like any of these reasons, all these reasons. It's easy to do. It's a suffix Misle Shmayim. Take it off again. Now he writes B'loi Bracha because Sveika suffix Brachas L'Hakel. The Migdash Ma'at on Shin Lam at Tziv Dalid, the same Mechab of Duli HaKodesh, he says the same thing. If a suffix, take it off, but try to get a bracha from elsewhere. In other words, when next time you make a 5 pounds that's chayev adai, so then you can be mafresh from this and make the bracha go on both. Now, so to apply it lamaisa, our suffix, this person had a vadai chiyuv, suffix if she took off challah or not, so there's a cheskas chiyuv, suffix if he did a mitzvah or not, we have all the reason to say, take off again, b'loi bracha. Now, if there's a suffix, if there ever was a chiyuv, so there's another tzad to be made, because no cheskas chiyuv. But again, if it's easy to do it and avoid tzveikas. We had a shayla where a bakery, an Erlich bakery rather, they bake bread and send out to stores to sell, and they had a suffix if one batch they took off ma'isa. And as they have a bunch of different proceedings going on, and there's a question, there was somewhat of an overlap, they're not sure if one batch they were mafresh challah or not. So, and they wanted to make a recall. Now, it's very embarrassing, and also it's very troubling. It's not taking the recall on the breads. So, the emes is that if generally they do it, we could say that they probably did do it. But here there's another eitzah that's kedai to mention, to whom it may concern. If they move quickly enough, they have an eitzah based on a Shulchan Aruch. And that is quickly get a 5 pounds of dough, either make it or you have it already, that you do not yet take off challah. Take off challah from that 5 pounds of dough, and have in mind all the bread that you sent out. Now, you're wondering, have in mind is good when you say tillim. How do you have in mind bread that you sent out? It's not even here. So this is a big sugi, which is not for now. We once discussed this. But when you have a tziruf, you could take off on all of that because of the tziruf. You make 2 pounds of cake, another 2 pounds of cake, and then you make another pound of cake, and you put it all together, tziruf sal is mitztarif. But you need the tziruf sal because you have all peturim. 2 pounds is butter, 2 pounds is butter, 1 pound is butter. You want to create a chiyuv, then you need a tziruf sal. But let's say you have 5 pounds and 5 pounds. You don't have to make a chiyuv. You want to make hafrasha on both. So then, it's clear in Shulchan Aruch, as long as it's in the same house, you can make hafrasha on both. But this, that I said it's in the same house, is only l'chatchila. B'di'eved, the mechaba in Hilchas Trumas, that's Shin Lamed Aleph Chaf Hei, that if you have chiyuvim, you could take off one hafrasha, even if it's not in the same location. And the Sharatzion in Hilchas Pesach, Tov Nun Zayin Yud Gimel, regarding matzah, says, B'di'eved, afilu kol kli munach b'bayis acher, v'hifresh mizeh al zeh, it helps. As long as you have a chiyuv in 2 places, even if it's 2 different places, as long as you have 2 chiyuvim, you can take one on the other. If you want to create a chiyuv and making a tziruf, you have to put it together. So our case, there is definitely 2 chiyuvim. You have 5 pounds in the bakery, 5 pounds or more sent all over, but is there a chiyuv, was a chiyuv? Then you don't have to make that recall. You have a tzadwa to be saimachan to make mizeh al zeh. Someone was eating at someone's home, and he's chodesh they didn't take off challah from the bread, from the Shabbos challah. Now I wonder if you don't trust them for the challah, how do you trust them for the kashrus? I mean, challah is easier than making it keeping kosher, but that wasn't the issue. That was the question. So here there's a simple eitzah that on the challah that you're eating, take off a little piece, leave it on the bread, whatever, put it on the side. It's already baked. It's not a risay seichem. But that's the pasuk, because the pasuk also says challah tarimu. So the paiskim say ideally you're supposed to take off challah from the dough, but you could also take off challah. That's another hafayich ba de kailaba from the bread. So you leave a little piece. You don't have to take off a kazayis. We'll soon see when you have a suffix, a kolshu is enough. And you don't have to burn it. Don't start making a fire in this person's house on the dining room table. You burn a little piece of bread. Just leave it on the side. And that's basically you a yotzim. A challenging question, which I saw someone had the shayla, they take off challah, and typically they put it into the freezer, and Erev Pesach, before Pesach, or like Baim, whatever, they burn all the frozen doughs. A few days after they did this, the woman started second questioning, maybe she forgot to take off the challah. She doesn't remember. So you go look in the freezer, you don't know how many doughs there were before, after, you can only way to determine if you took off the challah. So a few days after the baking, there was a suffix if she took off challah or not. So, Lamaisa, mitzad echad, you could say, well, Lamaisa, it's a suffix if you took off challah. It's a suffix of potential misa b'dei shamayim. But here, there was a much bigger suffix. If she took off the challah, maybe, she's worried, maybe it went back into the dough, and she baked the 5 pounds with that piece of challah. Now that piece of challah is an issa chomer. It's an issa derabanan that potentially was a mitzvah dei shamayim. So it's a suffix. In other words, here she validly took off challah. The suffix if it went back into the dough or not. So the emphasis we once discussed, that was tape 592, that if this happens at home, that you know the child put it back into the dough and you baked it, so you have to get a bezdin. You can be mata neder and start all over again. In other words, the bezdin will say, ois challah, ois challah, ois challah, ois truma, whatever, ois truma, and then take off again the challah. But I saw the Shevat HaKosi in Chelik Vav Shin Pei Zayin has this very shayla, and he says that really you told me right away she took off challah. A few days later she started thinking maybe it ended up. So he has an interesting analogy. We find in Hilchos Tefillah and Siman Kuf Yudalad, the Markatziyah, the Magen Gibayim, the Mishnah Berurah all say, if you're pretty sure you said the Alav Yavai, a while later, Zman Muflik later, you started thinking, did I say it or not? So we dismissed that. That's not a suffix, that's nervin. You're too nervous. So here also, this is really a much later, a few days later. So he wants to say, you don't have to do it in the first place, but at the worst scenario, you could make the Torah and take off a challah again. Now, the last group of questions that I first must apologize, I thought I would do more than I was able to do. I thought I would go through baked goods and fried goods, but there wasn't enough time, so I had a shayla. If I leave out part of the share, it's chatzi share. If we do the whole share, we end up going overtime, that's Bal Toisef. Now, which is where it's Bal Toisef a chatzi share? So, Bal Toisef is Zicha Deraisa. Chatzi share is a machloikis if it's Deraisa Derabanan. So we'll leave the chatzi share for a different time. And I want to finish at least this question, because this is again, every time we bake challah, and that is there a chiyuv today to actually burn the piece of hafrasha? Now, you have to realize that in a certain sense, this is a contemporary question. I'll explain you why. In the olden days, it was very easy. Every house had a fireplace during the winter. Certainly that was the source of heat. So you took the hafrasha piece and throw it into the fire and goodbye. Even during the summer, but people had, in the homes, they had a oven. They didn't have today electric ovens, or they had gas ovens. They had a regular fire, and every day you had a fire in the house. So it was no big deal throwing in the piece of hafrasha. Today, burning the hafrasha piece is much easier said than done. First of all, to burn it, and if you put it in the oven, then you start worrying about a kashrus issue, because that hafrasha is treif. And you wrap it, aluminum foil takes longer to burn. Some people collect it and put it, burn it before Pesach, which is also not so pashut, because the whole reason you have to burn it is it shouldn't come with a michshol. So people start collecting doughs and doughs until Pesach. Okay, I know. If you write in it challah and you tie it up and it's frozen, what's the chance someone's going to eat a frozen dough from the freezer? But lemaisa, it's interesting. In the earlier poskim, there's not much discussion about this. The Shulchan Aruch says burn it. No one discusses it. Is it lechatchila, b'diavad? Our times, all the poskim discuss it, and I think it's very, very pashut, because today it has become much more difficult. So, what's the question? Is there a chiyuv sreifa So there's a חיוב sreifa, so you have to do it. If it's hard, so you don't get intimidated by something that's hard, you do it. But maybe sreifa is just a hechatimtza of getting rid of it. We can't keep it because there's a michshol. So maybe sreifa is a hechatimtza. But if I could throw it out in the garbage and no one will eat it, so I got rid of the michshol, maybe that's also good enough. In other words, just like chametz, we paskin, it's lav dafka sreifa. Any way that you dispose of it is enough. There's a mitzvah chatchila burning, but there's no chiyuv. Maybe it's like they're cutting the nails on Erev Shabbos. So if you burn it, chosid. If you bury it, tzaddik. So there's no chiyuv sreifa mamish. Maybe the same is true regarding challah. So this is the question. And if you do burn it, does it have to be burned through and through? Because very often people put it onto the grate and they burn it. But if you look inside, in the middle, there's always a little bit left. Is it din mamish sreifa, like that has to be into a nifsel miachila in gansin? That's our question. So the emes is, this seems to be a discussion in the Rishonim. The Gemara in Shabbos Chafei says, Kashem she mitzvah lisraiv hakotshim shenitma'u, kach mitzvah lisraiv as a truma shenitmas. That just like there's a chiyuv to burn kotshim, that's tamei, there's a chiyuv to burn truma that became tamei. And Rashi explains, why do you have to burn truma shenitmas? The dumil lekodesh, va'oid mishum takola. Now you have to realize that truma tameya, and someone eats truma tameya, there's a big issa. So a person might come to eat it, so get rid of it. We don't want any michshol. So Rashi's lashon is you have to burn it to get rid of the michshol. Zok taisvis, what do you see from Rashi? That there's no chiyuv sreifa per se. It's just a way of avoiding a michshol. So according to Rashi, if you dispose of it properly, I should say respectfully, you don't just throw a piece of challah in the garbage, it has kedusha to it, but you double wrap, whatever, you put it in a way that it will be disposed of respectfully, you don't have to burn it. It's just a timtza of avoiding michshol. But Zaktais is the lainir, I don't agree. Because he quotes the Gemara in Tamura, that we see it's a din of nisrafim. It's not just avoiding michshol, which is true, there's an absolute chiyuv of sreifa. And therefore Taisus concludes, I think there's a chiyuv d'Rabbanan, inami midyaraisa, there's a chiyuv of sreifa, truma, shenitma. Now Rabbi says not just advisable, but Taisus says it's a chiyuv d'Raisa to burn the challah. Now of course Taisus is talking about when the whole challah is d'Raisa. Today in Eretz Yisrael, and certainly Chutz La'aretz, it's only d'Rabbanan, you can't have a chiyuv d'Raisa to burn what's d'Rabbanan. But in a real challah, there's a chiyuv d'Raisa to burn it. Now you have to understand that truma and challah are very similar. So if there's a chiyuv d'Raisa, at least potentially to burn truma tameya, it would stand to reason there's a chiyuv to burn the challah bizman hazeh. Now Rashi holds there's no chiyuv, it's just getting rid of it. And Rashi and Bechayres and Tamura, this is not my bekiyas, but the place can point out, Rashi other places also refers to that chiddush, lav dafka sreifa, just avoid michshol. So Rabbi say our question, is there a chiyuv to burn the challah or not, is actually a machlokes Rashi and Taisus. And the Sharatzian in Tafkuf Vav Sivka and Memches, when they talk about burning the challah, they take it from the matzah. He says some say it's the Raisa, and some say it's the Rabbanan. Ayin Rashi and Taisus in Shabbos Chafei. So here we see our question is a pretty good question. It's machlokes Rashi and Taisus. How do we paskin? Good question. So the Mechaber makes no mention of this in the Challah, but the Ramah in Yeredeya Shin Chavei Sivhei, no less than 3 times when he refers to challah and what to do with it, he mentions burning it. L'sarfa, kishasarfin, and then again he says that you burn it 3 times. The Ramah seems to assume that you have to burn the challah. Now, even though technically, even today, if you find a kohen that's not tamei or a kohen cotton, you could actually give him the challah to eat. That's the halacha, but it's not done. So effectively, the Ramah is telling us the minig is to burn the hafrasha. Now, according to this, if you're pasking like Taisus, I should stress, it's not just, it's advisable to burn, there's a chiyuv d'Rabbanan to burn challah bizman hazeh. And the emphasis is, indeed, that was the minig. You see in the earlier point, I'll give you one mashal, the Mat Ephraim, Taf Reish Chafei Sif Ches. The end of Mat Ephraim, he has Hilchas Sukkis, Hilchas Yom Tiv, and he says, if someone wants to bake on Yom Tiv, the problem is he what to do with the challah. Because you can't burn challah on Yom Tiv, because it's Sreif Shleil Tzorich. So he says, better burn the challah before Yom Tiv, make it before Yom Tiv. He's very busy about what are you going to do with the challah after Yom Tiv. You can't burn it on Yom Tiv. So why don't you just throw it out? So obviously Mat Ephraim did not consider it a suffix. If you have a piece of hafrasha, you have to burn it. Rabbi Yonasan Shteif in his Chuvas Reish Ayin was asked this question, and again he was asked because people don't have fires today. So he quotes Rashi and Tosfos, and he adds a raya to Tosfos. In Psachim Memvav, the Mishnah wonders what to do with challah betuma b'yamtiv. How you take off challah from tumah on yamtiv. Why? What's the problem? Because you can't burn challah on yamtiv. So it's a whole big sugi what to do with challah that's tameh on yamtiv. For Rabbi Yonasan, just throw it out. It's a big deal. Teretz, you can't throw it. You have to burn it, and you can't burn it on yamtiv. That's the dilemma. He says also you can't throw it in the garbage. It's bezayin to the challah. So he says, find a way to burn it. If you can't burn it in your house, so he says, go outside like they do when they burn the chametz, but burn the challah. He seems to be not relenting. Burn the challah. He says, mamish, if you have no other choice, then double wrap the piece of challah, throw it in the garbage, and hope that the garbage man eventually will burn it. Because in those days it was a suffix if it was either burned or thrown into the ocean. But he does not seem to be makel as far as burning. He says, and when you burn it until it becomes coals. So in other words, he holds the full chiyuv sreifa even bisman hazeh. The Minchas Yitzchak in Chelik Dalet Siman Yud Gimel is also convinced you have to burn it. We'll soon see he gives an interesting eitzah. Abchatzkel Rotz is eingesund in the Emek Tshuva and Aleph Kuf Nun Gimel. Tshuva was written over 60 years ago. It's interesting. He says he was in Yerushalayim and no one burns the challah. And he writes to the Satmar Rav Zechon Bracha, why not? And he proves conclusively, and he brings the raya from Psachim Memvav, that there's a chiyuv sreifa even bisman hazeh. So we see that he holds this, you must burn it. And also the Shmining Yerushalayim, they didn't burn it. So what's going on here? So Lamaisa, there are those that are makel as far as the sreifa. First of all, you have Rashi Shita. Rashi says, lav dafka sreifa. The Ramah 3 times writes about sreifa. So that's really, you have to look at the Lashon of the Ramah. The Ramah does not say there's a chiyuv sreifa. The Ramah says that the minig was to burn it. Okay? Because in those days, it was very easy to burn it. But there's a difference in minig and chiyuv. Maybe today that it's difficult, maybe we don't have to follow the minig. But maybe there's more to it. And this is more of an halachic reason. Could be in Eretz Yisrael, there's taka chiyuv to burn it. But Chutz La'aretz is different. What's the chilik? Eretz Yisrael, there's a chiyuv d'Rabbanan to burn the challah, to take off challah, and therefore it's real challah, and therefore you have to burn it. What happens if someone baked 5 pounds of challah, and Shabbos by the Suda Rechav, I can't believe it, I didn't take off challah yet. So in Eretz Yisrael, you're stuck. In fact, the challah, all that 5 pounds of bread is muktzah, because you can't eat it. In Chutz La'aretz, says the Shulchan Aruch, you're allowed to eat gesund teheit, leave over a bilkula, and after Shabbos be mafresh. After Shabbos be mafresh what I ate? Teretz says, yeah. Because it's not really so us in Chutz La'aretz, it's only like the shtakach teretz challah b'chutz la'aretz. So what do we see? That the cheftza is not really so asa. It's more of a mitzvah to do on the dough. So if that's the case, maybe there's no chiyuv to burn the chalas chutz la'aretz. Because there's not really so much chal like it is in Eretz Yisrael. So we can make a chilik between chalas chutz la'aretz and chalas Eretz Yisrael. And this probably is the Radvaz. Now the Radvaz, I must tell you, is talking about in Yerushalayim and about why they didn't burn Truma. But the Radvaz in Beis Tavshin Lamed Aleph, that's a tshuva, Siman Tavshin Lamed Aleph, he says if you have Truma Tameya, so either you burn it or Mashlicha Le'ibud Shalayavadei Tekala. So the Radvaz already gave an allowance that you don't have to burn it. He doesn't say what the svar is. Could be, he's saying that since only Midrabanon, the Chiyuv Tzreifa, maybe taka there's no such chiyuv bizman hazeh. But I will say the Chalkas Yainkev and Yeridei Yakov Peivav was asked in the same shayla like the Minchas Yitzchak about a difficult situation where you can't burn it, you have no fire, and he quotes Rashi and Taisis, and he makes a different cheshbon, but it's similar to our cheshbon from a different angle. He says, let's look this again. If I take of challah today and I find a kohen cotton or a kohen that's tahar, I could give him the challah to eat. So how could it be that this piece of hafrasha, a kohen could eat it and the chiyuv sreifa? Doesn't make sense. He could eat it and it's a chiyuv sreifa? It can't be. Must be in chutz la'aretz that there's no chiyuv sreifa. It's advisable, no chiyuv sreifa. The ik is lahasa michshol. So what he's saying is that if you're allowed to eat it, it can't be there's a chiyuv sreifa. Once it's reduced to just a minig, so you could say b'mokim that it's difficult. So just dispose of it properly. So he says also the fact you throw it into the garbage, it might get burnt. So he says if it's difficult, you don't have to burn it necessarily. As long as you get rid of it right away, it shouldn't come with a michshel. Rav Sternbuch in Chelik Aleph Tafreish Ayin was when he still was a Rav in Johannesburg, and it seems no one burnt the hafrasha in Johannesburg. So one Rav wanted to make a whole bayitzaku and make a kol kaira. She says no, you don't have to make a big kol kaira. He says the fact in Chutz La'aretz is less of a chiyuv sreifa than in Eretz Yisrael. And he also says this cheshbin, the fact that you're allowed to eat it, it can't be a chiyuv sreifa, and as long as you get rid of it in a proper manner, that's good enough. He says wrap it up and respectfully and put it in the garbage. Now he says the fact that you're allowed to eat it, it can be a chiyuv sreifa. He says in Eretz Yisrael, taka, there's probably more of a chiyuv sreifa, but not in Chutz La'aretz. But then he says that really you can't lechatchila just put it in the garbage and rely on the garbage men burning it, because there's a mitzvah to burn it. And the putting in the garbage, he says, is a misasik ba'alma. I don't know what he means, but he means say you're not making a shliach; it's just not your ma'isa. So that's a little disappointing. But I did see the Shmira Shabbos in Membei Ha'ora Nun Gimel. He says 2 points. He says, first of all, everybody's busy with double wrapping because they had paper. So if you wrapped it only once, it got the nimas. But today we have plastic, so you put the challah in a plastic bag, that's enough. And also he says, the fact that the garbage man will burn it, you could rely on that for the chiyuv sreifa. That's not like Rav Sternbuch's understanding. I think it's pashut. If you put it in, you make them sort of like a shliach, but it happens, it will happen. So you can rely on that, you're being yaitz the mitzvah of sreifa. L'chazinish in 2 places in a seif in Maisris, Zayin, Yud Gimel, and Demai, Tezvav Aleph also says if you don't have eitzim, you can't burn it, you could rely on disposing it in a proper way. Lamaisa, there's another cheshbon I want to add. The main reason it seems to get rid of it or to burn it, whatever it is lahasa michshel. In our time, it has become that saving the challah sometimes causes a michshel. First of all, the mere fact you keep the doughs until before Pesach is what Chazal didn't want us to do. Chazal wanted to get rid of it, not to hold on to it. So that you could say, no one's eating my frozen dough in the freezer. But very often by burning it, we run into kashrus issues. Now I can't do this now, but if you put the actual hafrasha onto the oven, so then you're making the oven treif, because the challah is treif. So on the grate, you'll say the grate kashes itself. So it's not simple. A meister the belt puts it on the grate and you kash out the grate, but to burn it, that causes more michshol than not burning it. So maybe you could rely on the sheet is that it's lav dafka sreif. The Minchas Yitzchak has a gewaldige Einfall. Sivkat Yud Beis, a long tshuva. At the end of the tshuva, he has the following eitzah. He proves, quoting a Maria Assad, that even if there is a chiyuv sreif, that's only if you have a kazayas. If you have less than a kazayas hafrasha, you don't have to burn it. So he says, if you feel you can't burn it, so be mafresh less than a kazayas, and then you can dispose of it, because no chiyuv sreif. Now you have to add, what do you mean less than a kazayas? There are more quotes to Maril. The minig is to be mafresh a kazayas. So, mayol mahai mihai, there's his pashut. It's only a minig take off a kazayas. But if you go like Taisvis, then it's a chiyuv d'rabbanan to burn it. So you're better off, if you have to deviate from a minig, then deviate from halacha. So then he says, but if you might be able to burn it, he says even a bigger chiddush, take off more than a kezayis and make it tanai. If I'll end up burning it, I'll burn the whole thing. I'm yotzim. If I'm not going to end up burning it, I only wanted the hafrasha originally to be chal on part of it that's less than a kezayis. I hope you get the picture. Klal Yisrael were for dairis were ma'aseh nefesh to burn it. It's kedai taka to burn it. I taka also burn it. I'm not trying to mizalzel, but if someone asks, is there a tzad to be makel in my house? It's difficult. Like someone said, every Shabbos my house is chaotic enough. I start burning the challah, the smoke alarm rings, the fire department starts coming. I don't need the aggravation on Erev Shabbos. So there are 4 tzad to be makel not to burn the hafrasha. Rashi holds there's no chiyuv. Some say chutz la'aretz is different. Hopefully in the garbage it will get burnt. And also, if there's more michshol by burning it than not burning it, we have what to be saimach on. Now, if you want to think of less than a kezayit, that's a 5th tzad to be makel. But if you do want to burn it, I just want to give you a little practical advice. The minig is to take off a kezayis, but you don't have to take off a huge football to be yotzim. A kezayis is the half of a large egg. We have extra large, so buy a large egg, cut it in half, that's all you have to take off of dough. When you do take off that small piece, which is enough, flatten it out, and then it burns quicker. When you freeze the dough and you burn it frozen, it takes much, much longer. Okay? I asked by Rabbanim what they do. One Rav told me he has a special sandwich maker that he made treif, and he burns the dough in it. I think that's a moifus. If you're going to keep dough in a sandwich maker, it's probably not going to burn. But he says it works for him, so if you flatten it out and it works for you, gesund hate. One Rav told me he takes an aluminum pan and goes outside in the porch and puts paper around it. And he says he doesn't put lighter fluid onto the actual hafrasha, because then it's nifsal miachila and you're not having mitzvah sreifa. But he makes it burn and he flattens it out and it burns quickly. One bacha told me he uses a blowtorch. Now that I'm not telling you to do, because now didn't have yarg vayavar for on the mitzvah, but if that's feasible, that probably works quickly. But the main thing is to do it a small piece, just enough guys, and flatten it out. Baruch Hashem, there are Yidden today that burn challah for nominal fees. You give them panos. That's also an eitzah. To flush it down is not an eitzah. That the poskim say that's a bezoyin. Now for chametz you're allowed to do that because there's no din of a kedusha by chametz. But in fact, the Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky in the Derech Amunah Beis Shin Sadik Tes, he says the Chazon Ish said you can't even pour mashke truma down the sink. It's a bezoyin. That was the kedusha that they felt with mashke of truma, kolshkein, to flush it down. That's inappropriate. If you have to burn it, do you have to burn it entirely? So I think that's pashut. If there's a din of sreif, it has to be nisraf. Until it becomes gecholim. So what if you want to do is, if you want to keep the minig, you'll burn it on the gas range and hope for the best, and then you throw it out and hope the garbage man will burn it. So you want to put the tut sirif. That's also might be an eitzah, but if there's a din of sreif, it has to be a complete sreifa. If someone has a shayla, if challah was taken off, and it takes off challah a second time, so that the paiskim say, that if you're taking off al zechumra, then even there's no minig of him taking a kazayis. So you take off a kol shoot, you're eating in someone else's house, you don't want to make a scene of yourself, leave a little piece over, and even though you made an hafrasha and your minig is to burn it, you don't have to burn it because that's only a chumra, there's no chiyuv sreifa, and there's no chiyuv of kazayis. Someone asked the question, and it's an intelligent question, can I burn the challah at night? What's the shayla? Because ein sarfim kachim balayla. But that all the paiskim say that this is not mamash a chiyuv sreifa like kachim, and yes, you could burn the challah at night. And achar, let me tell you an interesting shayla. Someone asked the Talmud of the Noid Yehuda, the Tshuva Miyahava, Leza Fleklish, and this is printed in the end of Chelik Beis, in Simon Tov Vav, he has Horace on Yeridei Shin Chav Beis. They took off challah, they certainly took off challah, and they lost it. They cannot find the piece to burn it. Do they have to take off challah again? So first of all, let's hope and pray no one finds that dough and eats it, because that's mamish, the michshel worrying about. But the ma'aseh, they lost it. So what's the shayla? So listen, this sounds like a very good shayla. Because this piece of challah is mom and koyin, and you didn't bring it to fruition. Maybe you have to take it off again. So he says no. He says, since today there's a mitzvah, like some sheetas, there's a mitzvah of sreifa, so obviously it can't be mam and koyin any longer. So what he's saying is, he's using the chiyuv sreifa lahakal. Since there's a chiyav sreifa today, it's no longer mum and koyin. So what is it? Just a mitzvah. If you took it off and you're not going to eat it, it's enough. And he points out that he found the Birkei Yosef, the Chidon Birkei Yosef says that. So here at least we have one halacha that this chiyav sreifa turns the kula. I go to talk to you all.
Shem Egan Shater, like the biggest shekert of Smith for today's shir. Rabbi say Yad Yisrael, amazing Moisa that does amazing work in Belarus, Pinsk, and other cities, and bring Yiddishkeit to the Yidden of the former Soviet Union. It's making a special campaign, 36 hours. Great schus of Kir V'choikim, bring Yiddishkeit back to Yidden who had Gzer Shmat for 70 plus years. Credit cards are accepted. Credit card machine up front, or you can join the campaign online. Use the booklets throughout the shul. Challah ben Akash Yom Rosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zachas is still the figure of Hebrew Torah Mitzvah Shenema L'Nei Chofetz L'Man Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh. Moshe Smith will say the seeking of today's shir in 5 minutes. Yad Yisrael, Yad Yisrael. What?
Okay, yes.
This is a good idea with the torch. It's going to be much smaller. And roll the torch. Take a torch. This is the great idea.
Happy? Welcome to see you. Think they're ready?
Ready?
Sick.
Now 60. Okay, ready?
That's not my home.
Okay, Rabbi said before the dough rises too high, we can't take challah, or Smith will say the sikkim of the Hafrashas challah.
Just we learned today, there's a very chashva mitzvah, and obviously something that brings bracha into our house. That's what the chinuch explains. But basically, it's related to Eretz Yisrael. More so, it's related to Rav Yeshvel there. Baruch Hashem, we still have a mitzvah derabanan, even a chutz laretz, like t'shtakach teres challah, because unlike Trumas and Ma'aser that we don't have a chutz laretz, this is more of a chayvas haguf, and Chazal were machayev, both Eretz Yisrael and chutz laretz, to take off challah even bizman hazeh. The amount is 43 1/5 bayim, the gematria of challah, and the various remozim, where you see the 1/5, but there's a remes to 43 1/5 bayim. The question of how much to take off, whether it's 2.5, someone pointed out maybe a little more than 2.5, or 2.5 or 5, is the old suffix on the skatnu habayim, which the Nevi Yehuda addresses regarding challah and other mitzvahs. That's in the tzlach and the end of psachim. But basically, we assume that 2.5 is probably chayiv and challah, because especially if you're not chayiv with the Nevi Yehuda, it's the skatnu habayim, but we take it out of bracha. 5 pounds is chayiv l'chol hadayis, and therefore bracha is said. Usually, you make 5 pounds of flour, there's a chiyuv of challah. If you make small amounts and you metzaref it, then even there is a chiyuv, even belila raka, even on cakes, but generally cakes are made in small amounts, and therefore there's no challah taken on cakes. A bakery, or a camp, or yeshiva, etc., or a housewife that makes a big amount of challah, a big amount of cake, using 5 pounds, should take off challah with the bracha. Lamaisa, if you have a suffix, the halacha seems to indicate you should take off challah misafik, and there are a few reasons not that we don't say sveika derbanan lekula. Either there's a suffix misadei shemayim or ikri deraisa, or as you said, it's easy to do. It's a sort of a davash yesh matirin, but in a suffix, unless it's in a boy le'yivshita, we do take off challah misafik. If a baker sent out a amount of bread was not yet used, they could be mafresh and they have a suffix. If they took off challah, they take off from a different batch. The mafrishin, even though it's not minamukah, but they have 2 chiyuvim. A suffix, maybe the challah was remixed into the dough. You could say if it happened, the suffix occurred, the person started worrying about it days later, you could say it's just that the person's nervous and you could ignore it. La'alocha, the minig is to burn it, and some people are ma'aser nefesh that could burn it. But we did see a few tztadim to be makel. First of all, chalas chutz laretz, maybe the chayfet is not so asa. It's just the mitzvah, you have to get rid of it, else the michshel, but it's not as asa as chalas Eretz Yisrael. The fact that a kohen could eat it, so you can't say that it's mamish a chi of sreifa. I did mention another tzad that it gets burnt with the garbage. I was not aware. Someone told me that today the garbage is not burnt; it's buried. So that tzad does not really apply. But you could rely, if it's difficult, that there's no chi of burning. The main thing is to get rid of the michshel. The best way to do it effectively is take the smallest kazayis, flatten it out. If you leave it to dry a little bit, then it's easier. If you freeze it, it becomes harder. We don't just dispose of it without respect, to flush it down or to put in the garbage. If you do dispose of it, do it in a proper way. Pashtus, if you burn it entirely, again, flatten it out. If you're eating in a place that you suspect there was no challah taken, leave a little piece over. You don't need kazayis, you don't have to burn it. You're allowed to take off challah at night and burn it at night. And as we said, if the challah piece got lost, there's no longer a חיוב, because the חיוב sreifa makes it no longer mam and kayin. Okay. Yes, Rabbi.
People bring it. That's always based piece. People bring it to the Shevat. By the time, for example, a place will bring it to someplace else. By the time it gets it, it's already defrosted. His most concern is people bring it to the Shevat, the Erev Pesach. They just took it out of the freezer and they're burning it. And then